Great. Before we let any outsiders in, I just wanted me to sort of go through one or two slides and check the slide transition.
I think HG is there. HG?
Who says G?
Hoimi. So just give me 2 minutes. I'll text.
Yeah. Hi, Hoimi, can you hear me? Hello? Okay. Can we... Can we do a couple of slide transitions, Hoimi? I mean, share your screen. Let's see how it looks. Okay. Now, I will tell you to go next or the previous or previous, and that's all that I'll say to you. So if you do a full screen, let's see how that looks. Not Zoom, slideshow, and then you go into slideshow, upstairs, up, yeah, and then from beginning. Right.
Hello,
hi.
Rahul.
Is that Chaya? Good afternoon. Who's that? Kavita.
That was Kavita Lagate. Hello.
Hi, Kavita. Good afternoon to you. We are all in the afternoon mode. I'm here from cold, gloomy, dark London. Yeah.
Good afternoon.
Thank God I'm not in Woolens.
Will time is there.
Oh, you mean it's a new
Voice
computer?
is breaking, no? She's in transit. I have a very bad throat, but I am going to still do the honors. I have been requested to do so, which I shall do.
Chaya, the honor is all mine.
Huh?
the honor is all mine.
Oh, come on.
Yeah.
Actually, I have such bad throat, I tell you. Very bad.
I have such a cluttered presentation. I was just watching it. I said, there are no jokes, no pictures. And the presentation is very, very
And why this does not have your your company's logo? They have opened some other presentation.
Oh. Tell them
Yes.
to. Okay.
Who's there? Lakshmi?
Okay.
Lakshmi?
Yeah.
Lakshmi?
Yeah,
Lakshmi.
ma'am.
Better, that is wrong presentation.
Yeah, ma'am. Yeah, ma'am. I'm opening the correct one.
I worked on it and I sent it to you all. No? Now
Yes,
why
yes.
the wrong one, beta?
No, ma'am. I'm opening that one.
Yes. Open the right one, please.
Yes.
Oh, great. I didn't even notice that. I have opened the right one on my other computer. Yesterday, Chai, I was presenting to somebody and my whole laptop went black.
Yeah, I know. I
Literally
saw you.
black. Yeah, so that's what scared me. I said, okay, let BMA do the honors of changing the
No,
slides.
they do that.
It is a news.
They always do that, and it is always safer because supposing from the speaker's side the Wi-Fi goes or the network goes down, then there should be no interruption.
Correct. And I can always sort of log on my phone, iPhone. Yeah.
Yeah. For most of the presentations, that is the protocol. Just a moment.
Yeah. There's the one, right? You had done it was called final. Yeah, that's the one.
So are you able to see my
Yeah,
screen?
this is the one which says final. That's the one Chai sort of corrected. What?
Final one.
Right. So we are on the right presentation, no, Chaya?
Yes, that's the correct one because I worked on it, no? So
Yeah,
once
I
I
know.
work on something,
That's the one. You're the one who called it final. So
Huh?
you're the one who gave it the final shape.
Lakshmi
Thank you.
knows once I've done something, I never forget.
Yeah, I remember, ma'am.
And I'll make them dig it out also from hell or heaven.
Why do you start with hell, Chaya? I mean,
mean,
start with heaven and then hell.
No, never. Hell is only for me. I never put my people through hell. Those who work for me, I never put them through hell. But even if I have to go through hell, I will do
I'll ask
that.
them
But I
separately if that is true.
Huh?
I'll ask them separately if that is true.
Please do. By all means.
No, just
By
kidding.
all means.
No, kidding,
Please,
because just
please
kidding.
do.
Kidding.
They are happily following my instructions even now when I am a nobody out there actually.
You're always a somebody, Chaya.
No.
Nobody doesn't happen because of designations.
Oh man, that's really profound.
I never had a designation.
Nobody happens because of the designation. I really like that, Rahul. This is something to remember.
No. When I was working with the Japanese for 8 years, I was product manager. Because what happened, if you upped your rank, then you could never get things done. Because if you call yourself general manager, the top guy at the Japanese would talk only to general managers.
No.
But all the work was being done by the managers below.
Right.
So though I owned a share of the company and so on and so forth, I always called myself product manager. That way I had access to top and to the bottom. Because the minute you increase your rank in the Japanese hierarchy, you're not supposed to talk to the chaps below who are actually doing the stuff. So what's the point?
Right.
So I probably had the longest career path when I had a career path without any promotion. Money increased a lot. That's a different thing. Anyway, So
So now our Vice President, Mr. Rajesh Sharma, will be joining in.
okay.
They'll kickstart the proceedings, and then I will introduce you, and then I will hand over this podium to you and the team, secretariat team, to take the presentation forward.
Yeah, to
That's
take
the
the
way
slides.
we'll go
Excellent.
about it. Yeah, just to
Excellent.
let you know. Yeah.
Cool. So we have totally about, yeah,
Right now, just the BMA team is there. People are yet to join.
well, that's
They'll
fine.
join in. Yeah, they'll join in. Yeah. Good afternoon, Rajesh ji.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Rajesh ji, let me introduce you to Rahul Kalla, our speaker of the day. Rajesh Sharma ji is our vice president this year and therefore president-elect next year.
Good afternoon.
And Rahul Kalla is our speaker today.
Thank you very much, Chayaji, and thank you very much, Rahulji, for taking out time for today evening session. I mean, we are honored to have you with us on this session, and I think in another 3 minutes, we will be starting the session.
Correct. I hope I stand up to the billing. So
Oh yeah,
let's see.
I mean, I think you are so moderate,
No, it's
modest.
not that. It's a very, very wide subject.
Yeah.
And it's a dangerous theme because it's global warming. So not subject to good jokes. So let us see how it progresses.
Yeah.
Hello, Indrapal ji.
Indrapalji is muted.
Yes. Indrapal ji is our former president, senior to us. I think the admin has muted everyone.
Oh, that's fine.
Yeah, yeah. So Indrapal ji was the editor of eAmbit.
I remember.
Yes, yes. So that's where Rahul Kalla made an intellectual contribution on reimagining the global supply chain post-pandemic.
Yes. I remember.
So Sir was with Godrej, Rahul, and for years now, he has been responsible for taking out their magazine, which is a very posh one. So we had requested him to do the honors, of editing our own journal as well, and Sir very happily did that for us.
Yes, you had some really good articles in that. I noticed. I mean, it really came a long way during the COVID period, and the whole BMA. I mean, I
So
think
it was a
you
very
worked out
nice
very
collection.
well.
Very nice collection it was. Very nice collection. It was a pleasure.
I have Mr. David Gill also joining in from St. John's Innovation Center,
Oh, that's so
where
wonderful. Oh,
St. John's Innovation Center
yeah.
is the oldest innovation center in Europe, and David has taken it to really high places. He's also a fellow Sloan, but from Stanford, from
Oh,
Cambridge. He's got a long and illustrious career, and I'm privileged to work with him at St. John's. We do projects in emerging frontier markets. And that's my area within St.
well,
John's.
it's so wonderful to have you, Mr. David. Welcome aboard.
He is muted.
I think he's on mute.
He is also muted. Yeah. Muted.
I think, but it's not appearing here.
Yes, yes. Now we can hear
So,
you.
Very good. Well, thank you for the welcome, and very good evening to everybody. I'm looking forward to this evening's presentation. And I think the whole area of clean tech is one of those that none of us can avoid. It's the big topic for the next decade.
Yes, yes.
If
So
David
we
was
have
presenting, it would
Mr.
have been at a whole different level. But yeah, I will try to do my best.
so Chayaji, it's already 5 o'clock.
Yes, yes.
Can
Please,
we,
I think yes. We should
your
start.
permission?
Yes, please do. Yeah.
Yeah. So I take this opportunity to welcome all the people on call for another session of Friday Fundamental series, which we have been now having for more than a year. And today's topic actually is a very, very interesting topic with the hot topic going on of global warming everywhere. And just a week back, I was reading somewhere that glaciers in Antarctica are, there was a rain for the first time after so many years there. So with this context, today's topic of creating businesses for a green economy, will be a very interesting topic, and I am sure, this will be of interest to everybody. And we welcome Mr. Rahul Kalla, an expert in this area, and looking forward to hearing from you, sir. And I will request our past president, Ms. Chaya Sehgal, to introduce the speaker, and the session is on for the speaker to take on that. Chayaji, I would request you to do the honors, please.
Thank you, Rajesh ji. A warm welcome to all the dignitaries and all the participants and audience today. I have this privilege and honor to introduce the speaker of today, Mr. Rahul Kalla. Mr. Rahul Kalla is not new to BMA. Last year, as the pandemic struck, and we rolled out our series, Leader Speak series, which eventually culminated in our electronic magazine, E-Ambit. In its very first volume, Rahul had contributed. He had made a sterling intellectual contribution, let me say it this way. And the title then was Reimagining Global Supply Chains Post-Pandemic. And he is there today with us again. This time, speaking on a niche topic. Let me announce that the topic was selected by him. And while we were in discussions, I was casually informed that Rahul actually ended up studying 11 books to prepare today's speech. And so that makes all of us extremely eager to listen to him, because I wonder if any of us has ever read 11 books for one speech of 1 hour. I mean, at least I have never done that in my lifetime. I don't think I have the capability to do that either, but Rahul seems to have done it. And I have this formality to comply with, as in to introduce him formally to all of you, So I'm going to do that quickly and not going to stand between you all and him, and because I am as eager as all of you to get started with this session. So let us learn a little bit about Rahul, our friend. He founded Laya Consulting Limited, London, UK in 2001. He holds an engineering and business degree from BITS Pilani and the IIM Calcutta respectively, and is a Sloan Fellow from the London Business School. He has over 3 decades of experience in international business development, deal facilitation, and establishing distribution channels with a special focus on identifying and implementing partnerships with both multinationals and medium-sized firms in frontier and emerging markets of North Africa, Middle East, near Europe and Asia. That's quite an all-rounded experience, along with all-rounded qualifications, Rahul. He also works with technology companies to develop strategic options for the future based on scenario planning and methodologies. The St. John's Innovation Center at Cambridge University has appointed him as a senior advisor for international business development to assist them to conceptualize and develop innovative programs that have been successfully executed across frontier markets at senior governmental and ministerial levels. I'm very happy to announce that Mr. David Gill from St. John's Innovation Center is also today with us. Welcome, Mr. David Gill. We are very happy to have you with us, and it's very nice of you to have taken out time. And we look forward to having you on BMA platforms, again and again at many more occasions along with Rahul. So Laya Consulting has clients ranging from FTSE 10 companies to early stage technology companies. Again, a very wide scope of work. The clients have spanned companies from the UK, Turkey, India, Russia, South Africa, and Libya. Well, I'm already looking and visualizing the globe in my head, and now I'm thinking of how to set up green business as well. That is something now I want to hear from Rahul. Over to you, Rahul, and to our secretariat team to facilitate this presentation. Thank you very much for joining, and welcome everyone once again.
Thank you. Okay. The reason I had to read 11 books was because I knew very little about the topic, except for having invested in a few companies in the area. And I thought there's a great way of getting to know a lot more about a topic which is going to be very important for us. And I sent the final presentation to Chaya, realized it was very, very busy. It had just one picture, and the possibility of making jokes in this presentation is minimal because the entire topic is, here and now and quite urgent. So much so that when I opened the British papers today, I realized that the Taliban Cultural Committee has assured the world that they will be signing on to the Paris Climate Change Accord and working on temperature, holding down greenhouse gases and so on. Well, there are two ways of doing it. One is to bring your country back into the Stone Age, in which case you won't pollute. And the other way is hopefully what we will see in this presentation. Whereas we, go forward, doing good and doing no harm to the earth and to ourselves. So I named this presentation actually Energy on the Cusp of a New Era, from Carbon to Electronics. And on the next slide, you will come across the only picture in the whole presentation. And this picture is very important because on the top, we have a car. It looks like a diesel car because it's spewing a lot of stuff. And in the bottom, we have an electric car, which is connected to a dirty power station. Now, the dirty power station is a trope for the whole value chain. I'm not meaning that the pollution created to get the electric car not pollute is not only because of the power station, it's because of the entire supply chain that goes into making the batteries of the electric car and so on, which I'll touch upon. So think of the smoke spewing, power plant at the back as not just a power plant, but everything that goes to pollute the supply chain. Right? And we go to the next slide. So what we are saying is currently, now these are very well-known facts, but I'm just repeating it. The first 3-4 slides, I just want to set the philosophy behind what we are going to lead to. The point is we're using 30% more natural resources than can be replaced. Now, that's a fact. If everybody lived like a European, we would need 3 planets worth of resources. I mean like a current European, but Europe is doing really good on the greening front. If everyone lived like an American, we would need 5 planets worth of resources. Now, this is true. But unfortunately, we have only 1 planet. And what is happening is a lot of the stuff we are driving is leading to green the economy, to reduce the greenhouse gases, et cetera, it's not being done quite the right way is what I noticed. Because the implications that we need to do, we need to take into account is we need to use earth abundant materials and not the equivalent of, say, blood diamonds coming from the Congo. Because the ladies here, I genuinely hope, would like to know the provenance of where the diamonds came from. And if it was dug up from an open pit in the Congo by 10-year-olds, you would not buy it. But you're buying the lithium and the cobalt, which comes from there. Anyway, we'll touch on that again. The second point is we have 5,000 times more solar energy hitting the planet than we need as energy. The third point is, and this came about because my friends were discussing about how Madras, or Chennai as it is now known, is having a water problem. I was thinking it's right next to the Indian Ocean, so it doesn't make any sense for Chennai to have a water problem. 70% of Earth is water. But we need just a fraction of it to ensure that we don't have to save on water and just use 2 buckets a day and stuff like that. Makes no sense. So my point in the presentation will be that few resources are truly scarce. They're not scarce. We can't access them economically, right? The next slide, please. So here, okay. Did we not have 1 planet living slide in this? It doesn't matter. We come to the concept of abundance. I'll just talk. Hoimi, did we skip 1 slide? No, the previous one. The one before? Yeah, so we skipped that. Okay. So we addressed that. Let's go to the next one. Sorry, my mistake. Concept of abundance. So I just want to bring this example to show what we mean by abundance, what we mean by accessibility, and what we mean by scarcity. A couple thousand years ago, the Roman Emperor Tiberius was given by his goldsmith a plate made of aluminum. It was shiny, it was strong, and he thought that the emperor would, sort of reward him because he discovered a new metal. But Tiberius cut off his head because he didn't want the aluminum to destroy his the value of the gold which he had hoarded over his rule. And aluminum was lost to humanity for 2,000 years. It appeared again in the 1800s when Napoleon III threw a banquet, and it was so rare that his really honored guests had aluminum plates, and the other nobles in his court had gold plates. So that was the value of aluminum. But then in 1886, Hall and Heroux used electricity to liberate aluminum from bauxite. So, and I'm very familiar with it because I did a whole term at the Hindustan Aluminum Company working on the electrolysis of aluminum. Anyway, so aluminum, which is the 3rd most abundant element in the world, then genuinely became accessible to people. So here we get the concept of abundance and using earth abundant materials. And let's go on to the next slide. So that concept we keep in mind, one planet living and concept of abundance right from right through the presentation. Now, when we come to green energy opportunities, why do we care about green energy opportunities? Because global warming, which is an overall temperature, increase in the overall temperature of the earth, is really affecting us, right? Now, we all have read about it, heard about it. We know that many people have told us that India is going to have a huge refugee problem when Bangladesh drowns over, when the seas rise. And this is true. Seawater is coming in, destroying multiple plant forms. Food has become an issue. People are moving. So it has a catastrophic effect on sea levels. I can see London's climate changing, right? And we can see how climates are becoming colder, hotter, wetter. This was not normal. This is because we have used the Earth's resources in a very bad way. I guess all our dream has been to live like Americans, right? More cars, bigger cars, more ACs and everything. Somewhere the whole Gandhian economy went for a 6. Now, it doesn't matter. By harnessing green opportunities to solve global warming, we can address global scale. The good thing, if I can use that word, about global warming is people have realized that it is genuinely a global problem. The pollution created in China affects us in Britain. The plastics thrown into the sea, somewhere, say they float through multiple seas, end up in dolphins, kill sea life. So we all are beginning to realize, whatever be our differences, that it's one world, one planet that we are living in. So necessarily, these are global problems, and solving them will be huge opportunities, because whatever solution you come to, whether you come to in England or Bombay or Madras or Libya or wherever else, they will have applications around the world. So the plus side is the big problems will give big opportunities. And the green entrepreneurs are going to create the tools, technologies, and mindsets to solve global warming. Now, we have to solve it. The reason this whole presentation is cluttered in my way, I would rather have kept it, far less dense, but I genuinely needed to cover a lot more material. And it's because it is upon us and it is critical. And we then have to address the triple bottom line going forward. A lot of this has happened, in my opinion, and I may be wrong, is because the profit motive became very, very important, and it became more important than anything else. So it did not matter what you produced and how you produced it, as long as you could sell it for a profit, right? So now we have to address the triple bottom line of protecting people, protecting the planet, and then generating profit. The profit motive doesn't go out. All that we are saying is addressing these huge problems will lead to big profits, but we will need to do the first two, which are more important, because we have only one Earth. And if that doesn't exist, the rest of it is pointless. Go to the next slide. Here we come to the third sort of philosophy, after philosophical slide, if I may say. From the first one was one planet living, second was concept of abundance, and the third is a circular economy. Because we've so far been working with an extraction and consumption economy. And we have to go to a regeneration and restoration economy, which is a circular economy. Because even though many materials we will use will be abundant, we will not use them in a wasteful manner, other than energy maybe, because if energy is abundant, like solar and so on, if you don't use it, it goes to waste. And we have to redefine value creation by ensuring it is regenerative by design. So whatever new stuff we create, it needs to be regenerative. I'll come on to it in more detail later. And the entire economy, circular economy, is built on eliminating waste and pollution and keeping products and materials in use. So using them once and throwing away is no more an option, whatever be the material. And the one which I was most impressed by, and which I won't touch here, but you can Google and check on it, is the European Bauhaus project, which is led by many disciplines in Germany. And that really set me thinking. And I would advise all of you to have a look at it. The European Bauhaus, if you Google it, you'll come to what it is, and it'll give you a lot more ideas. Next slide. So what do we talk about when we talk about diverse green opportunities in a circular economy? We are talking about skills, adapt, there's a spelling mistake, capabilities and adopt is right, capabilities in biomaterials, additive manufacturing, and digital fabrication and AI. So we have to bring multiple skills together to drive a circular economy, right? Because we are not planning to go back to the Stone Age and just saying reduce consumption. We are planning to live well, but live sustainably. Now, the two are quite different. That's why my Taliban joke in the beginning. And we're talking about various stuff, right? I'm just giving you a flavor of what it is. For example, bio-designed packaging dissolving after use. I understand in Bangalore, one of my friends was telling me yesterday that they have designed, cutlery, which when you have your takeaways from Uber Eats or Deliveroo here, or I think Swiggy or Zomato in India, you get packaging and cutlery which will naturally degrade. And he was talking about bubble packs which are not made of plastic, multiple things, but this is just the beginning. The bio-designed packaging will go much higher than that. Whichever packaging you get in, it will dissolve after use. That's the goal. And we're talking about algae being facades for buildings to generate energy, because buildings have to become living things if they have to generate energy. So they're not going to be just consumers of energy. And so it's just a flavor of multiple things, right? So when you move fashion from take, make, waste model, that's what we do. Cheap fashion. I mean, now when I was young, and you realize how old I am, we used to have just 2 pairs of shoes. But now my kids, when they were growing up, had multiple pairs. What happened to all those shoes? They just thrown away. So cheap fashion has led to huge amount of pollution. And the take, make, waste model, it has increased the wealth of several nations, Bangladesh included, India included. But in general, it has been very bad if you see it in a one planet approach. And the other stuff, biomimicry, because the nature has come up with so many efficient stuff, so much efficient design, that we need to figure out what is it that nature is doing well that we can do well. And that is making shell lace structures. I would say an entire fuel cell technology which came about for hydrogen cars and so on, which I'll touch upon later, came about by watching the photosynthesis in leaves. Why leaves are green and not black is a different issue, because if the plants were designed to use solar very correctly, the leaves would be black and not green. But nature has given green leaves because the leaves do other stuff than converting solar energy into food. And the fifth point is, while I talk about abundance, we still need to keep in mind that we have to treat every material as if it was extremely valuable and scarce. It is abundant, but we will not make it for making its sake. We will ensure a regenerative economy. And then again, all of this needs cross-disciplinary collaborations for complex problems. And this will be disciplinary across countries, across science, getting the technologies out of science, applying the technologies, getting finance, because a lot of it will depend on proper taxation, support for these, because a lot of this only will happen if countries have an overarching philosophy and fund the vision going forward. There's a reason why China is so far ahead in solar and hydrogen and many things, green ammonia, is because the government needs to support it. Just one or two private sector companies or a few cannot do it on their own. It has to be part of law. And you have to collaborate with universities, you have to collaborate with other scientists and so on. Shall we go to the next one? Now, this slide I call decarbonization opportunities in the built world, right? We're very proud of the fact that India has thousands of years of civilization. That means we have buildings which, if not 1,000 years old, some cities are like Benares, these are hundreds of years old. But we cannot be just destroying all these buildings and destroying all the deployed capital in the current infrastructure and current assets built over decades and say there's not green, so we just wipe it all out. We have to talk about decarbonizing the built world, already built world. What we build new might be very, very green, but what is already built has to undergo a brown to green asset transformation. And construction creates a really high amount of global CO2 and overall greenhouse gases. So we got to figure out which assets can be upgraded, right? Most importantly, we have to work on grids, electric grids. We have to stabilize the grids and build more resilient grids. Now, we can't have any EV strategy and all other strategies if the grid fails. I mean, if you put on 200 ACs, if the grid fails in a suburb, imagine what will happen if they become wealthy enough to buy 200 Teslas and each Tesla sucks in the electricity required for 200 ACs. What do you think will happen to the grid? So we are talking about decommissioning and dismantling of current asset stocks. We are talking about alternative materials and equipment opportunities because we require a lot new equipment. We require a lot more new alternative materials. And we need design process or optimization for greening opportunities. Because the whole design process, which again comes back to the fact that it's going to be collaborative across several fields, right? Go to the next slide. Now, we cannot talk about greenhouse gases and CO2 emissions and everything else without discussing what are going to be the real drivers of the green economy. Because first of all, we'll need energy in plenty, right? And energy is going to come from multiple sources because we need to replace fossil fuels. That seems to be something which everybody is agreed on. It's pretty clear that, as I touched upon before, we have the sun, we have wind, we have hydrogen, which is the most abundant element in the universe. We have tidal energy. Then issues about, after making the energy, how we store it. And the issues about, the current infrastructure of the oil producers are not all going to go out of fashion tomorrow. We have 10 million EVs in the world? Or maybe they become 20 million because the Chinese have started selling a lot more. But we have 1.2 billion internal combustion engines, cars with IC engines, right? And they just can't go to zero very quickly. And these EVs, if you were to make everything EV, our grids can't take it. They'll collapse. So we have to talk about carbon capture. Okay, so that's also a big theme, which I haven't frankly covered very much in detail. I'll tell you some of it, but it's something for the Hindustan Petroleums and the Bharat Petroleums and the ONGCs of this world to really think about. They are thinking about it. That's a good part. Exxon, Chevron, and my favorite oil company, Equinor, they're doing lots of it. And let's see. I mean, the leader by far are Equinor, Royal Dutch Shell, and BP. Exxon has just got onto the bandwagon recently because of some board pressure from a very small fund, which has again lessons as to how individually, at an individual level and small firm level, we can drive changes at the big company level. And that's worth seeing what happened to Exxon. So shall we have to go to the next slide, please? Right. Because it's largely an Indian audience, I use the term Surya Namaskar. Having said that, I noticed yoga is becoming very, very popular in the UK. And most of the British would know what Surya Namaskar means and probably practice it on a per capita basis more than the Indians, because the number of yogis I see here is really quite a few, and it's very heartening. One of the things we talk about alternate energy, everybody, including Dr. Merkel of Germany and the Japanese, they all seem to run down nuclear energy, right? So I'm not touching on nuclear energy because somehow after Fukushima and the 3 Mile Island disaster and a few very few and far between disasters, nuclear seems to have been given, it's been deemed unsafe for some reason. I don't believe in it. I think the technologies that were developed were not the best ones to liberate fission or fusion energy, but that's besides the point. All the point I'm trying to make here is all the energy on Earth is actually coming from a nuclear reactor, a fusion reactor called the sun. Because sun is generating energy by fusion, and then it releases it as photons. And the photons then fall on the Earth and pretty much lead to every other form of energy, right? Because if there was no sun, none of it would be here. So in a weird way, we are using nuclear energy all the time, but we don't think about it. And some basic numbers, really doesn't matter how accurate I am or not. It's 173,000 terawatts, trillions of watts of solar energy hit the Earth, which is about 10,000 times. I would feel it's even more times world energy use. Now, solar currently can be harnessed through photovoltaic cells or concentrated solar power. Now, here again, what they call CSP, here again, exactly like it happened in nuclear, because so much capital went from China on photovoltaic cells and they made it so cheap. The other very good alternative, and I'll say why it's a good alternative, of concentrated solar has just remained like a lab experiment. There's a very beautiful CSP plant in Morocco. So if you ever go on a tourist visit to Morocco, I think a James Bond film was filmed there. It's really awesome to see a concentrated solar plant. And that has been, lagging behind. It's all because the way capital is allocated drives certain things. But the point I'll try to make right across this presentation is there is no silver bullet. We need to be investing in many different forms of energy because we don't know. We need all of them. We need more of some and less of the other, but we need all of them. And we also don't know where the science and technology will take off, right? So we have to be laying multiple bets. Just like, good fund manager, early stage fund manager buys multiple companies. He doesn't expect all of them to become 10 baggers or 100 baggers, but he does put money in all of them. We are not doing that as a society. And we get driven by what is happening in China because they would have put a lot of money, and that is driving down prices in certain cases. And big challenge is storage. Because guess what? Sunlight is intermittent, wind is intermittent. And the huge transmission losses as you bring from one place to the other. Right? Next slide, please. Now, sun. Here comes the sun. I'm a great fan of the Beatles. But the issue with the sun is it's there everywhere, but not all the time. Right? And that's critical. Because solar PV cannot supply power once the sun sets. If sun sets, storage becomes critical. Concentrated solar plants, which concentrate armies of mirrors to focus sun's rays, to generate heat, to run a power plant, can also store the heat to power through the night. Solar energy can also produce fuels that store energy to be used where electricity is less practical. Like technology is coming up where the sun plus carbon dioxide from waste or from the atmosphere plus water can create liquid carbon fuels, and liquid carbon fuels are very useful because they use existing infra, right? And we anticipate technologies to mass produce materials to convert sunlight into hydrogen fuel. I'll touch on it when I go into hydrogen, because hydrogen has a big advantage over solar PV because it has by mass, not by volume, the highest energy density, and it can be easily ported, right? We'll come into it. So solar refineries of the future will convert hydrogen into liquid fuels for vehicles, ships, aircraft, and a whole range of products from fertilizers to plastics. And we'll see that in many, many cases, they will use green ammonia. Ammonia becomes a very efficient hydrogen carrier. Come to the next slide, please. Wind energy. I'm very proud of the place I live in, the UK, because whatever you might be hearing about Brexit and other stuff, what the UK has managed to do is first realize it's an island. And second, it has become the Saudi Arabia of wind energy. And we expect to meet 40% of UK's energy needs by wind by 2030. So being an island and in the North Atlantic, it's a very windy island, especially in Scotland and the north. And on the global wind atlas, it has the highest wind speeds, highest mean average wind speeds of 9.75 meters per second. Right. I actually went out into the sea just last Saturday and was quite impressed by the number of turbines which were operating. So I've seen quite a few of them, but there were more, I think, older installations and among the older installations, we already have 2,200 offshore turbines, 39 offshore projects, 10 gigs capacity, powering about 10 million homes. Huge advances in turbine technology. Current new projects use 107-meter long blades. One rotation can power a UK home for 2 days. And by 2050, blades will be 350 meters, producing meters producing 35 megawatt per turbine. And what I'm really impressed by is a lot of this wind energy is being implemented by that Norwegian oil company called Equinor in the North Sea, right? Equinor, the oil company, which has very strong zero carbon targets because it's owned mostly by the Norwegian pension fund. It has given them those targets. And it's investing hugely in the hydrogen economy in the US and the wind economy in the UK and the wind economy of the UK and the US. And I see when oil prices go up and down, being an investor in a few oil companies, I'm a very tiny investor, I see that Equinor holds up much better when oil prices are going down, because people have stopped looking at Equinor as an oil company, but look at it as an energy company. And I can clearly understand why. Going forward, even if people say we've reached peak oil or whatever, Equinor and a couple of other oil companies will be worth hanging on to because they'll become energy companies. And as it says here, by 2050, blades will be 350 meters long. General Electric has created that, I think, Halley blade, I forget the particular name of it, really large blades, which are being used now in the North Sea by Equinor. And they have given a massive wind contract to Equinor Consortium, which is again going to use the GE blades. And we can clearly, and the whole supply chain issue has been now being really seriously addressed by the US. And they're talking about building out the whole stuff, either in Europe or in US. Now, what I did notice about turbines when I was on my trip to the sea on Saturday actually, is wind speeds increase as you go further into the sea, right? And it becomes very difficult to put stationary turbines. So you have to, the whole concept of floating offshore turbines is coming up because they need to be much further out, 60 miles into the sea. Now, if a turbine is 60 miles into the sea, then power is being created 60 miles away. Then that power needs to be brought back to the shore. And the whole issue of line losses becomes very important. That's where high voltage DC, because high voltage AC is a huge loser of energy compared to high voltage DC, which also loses energy, but not so much. So to minimize transportation losses. So multiple things have to work together is again the thing. Next slide, please. Now, this is a really, really busy slide. I didn't know any other way to give a proper, introduction to hydrogen. Because is it a fantasy or a future fuel? Because a lot of people, when you talk about hydrogen, they think about blowing up. Some guy told me, yes, hydrogen can be stored if you can surround it by Kevlar and so on. But what has happened is the entire energy infrastructure has been developed around oil and nat gas. And transportation of oil and nat gas adds just a few cents to the cost of the gasoline or the oil at the pump. Now, many forms of transportation, heavy duty trucking, shipping, aviation, etc., depend on the portability and reliability of fossil fuels. 40% of the total global transportation cannot be electrified. Now, if you want to electrify a truck, full truck, the weight of the battery is huge. Right? If I remember right, about the battery weight in Tesla is about 60 kilos or more. And then if you have the truck will use majority of the energy to just transport the battery. So its payload comes down a lot. So it does need a very different kind of energy. And therefore, Toyota is the leader in hybrid cars. If you remember, the Prius came out long before everything else. And the Prius was hybrid. And if you notice, the Japanese have not jumped onto the EV bandwagon with the same enthusiasm that, for example, General Motors, Ford, Nissan, Renault, which actually came off the Renault Leaf, which is a great car, and the Chevy Volt, which was selling electric vehicles before Tesla. They have not jumped in because they've decided, and they actually think decades ahead. And I can say that because I worked for many years with Panasonic, who did, Tesla's Gigafactory was Panasonic's, frankly, and then other things happened. They think decades ahead, and then Toyota decided to design the Mirai, which in Japanese means the future, and under hydrogen, because they don't, again, want to be dependent on materials, being an island, being resource deficient. They're the best users of abundant materials, right? You already said that abundance is in many cases not the problem, accessibility is. So they're working on the technologies to figure out how to have the Mirai run on hydrogen. And if I'm not wrong, there are about 80 odd Mirai in London and about 100 to 200 odd in California. What it is limited by is exactly the same as what EVs are limited by, is the number of stations. I think there are very, very few stations in London where you can sort of roll up in your Mirai and then fuel up. But that again becomes an issue for the, what shall I say, for the government, right? The government has to put money, give the incentives. For example, if you're an EV, you drive into London, you don't have to pay the congestion charge, you don't have to pay the emission charges and so on. But so government has to do for the same for hydrogen, and it is doing. It is doing. And actually, what I was also very happy to see, I mean, it does say that 40 countries have hydrogen strategy, 90 projects worldwide, and so on. I was happy to see that India has a fairly decent hydrogen strategy coming up. I believe, and I stand corrected, the railways have got a hydrogen mobility plan. The first bid, and I saw the tender documents for that, is for an 89-kilometer train between Sonipat and Jind. Alstom is making a train in Germany. I think they've already run the trials on that, running entirely on hydrogen. I said the finance ministry has released a hydrogen energy mission for 21-22, mandating refineries and fertilizer plants to use hydrogen. There are multiple initiatives in automotive hydrogen in India, which makes a lot of sense for me because the networks are so bad and we'll be so dependent on materials from China, whether it be rare earths, whether it be refined cobalt, nickel, and so on. So I believe 2 hydrogen buses are running in Delhi, which is a collaboration between IIT Delhi and Mahindra & Mahindra. 15 three-wheelers, again IIT Delhi, Mahindra & Mahindra. 1 fuel cell car, which is what the Mirai is, being designed by the CSIR. So the next slide, please. How am I doing for time? Oh.
We have time till 6:30. Maybe
So where
you
are we
can
now?
speak for some 15 minutes and then we'll take some question and answers.
Wow, so I am going very slow. So I'll just go through the hydrogen. I'll not explain the whole chemistry of the hydrogen economy. There's no point because I could easily give you the data and you could use it because it's all for the good. There's no point holding this. And all that I need to say is the 3 points in the slide, so I can fast forward, is hydrogen is not cheap to produce, okay? Now, there are multiple colors of hydrogen. They're called brown hydrogen, gray hydrogen, green hydrogen, sorry, blue hydrogen, green hydrogen. Now, let's go to blue and brown hydrogen is when you use, dirty energy, say, coal-fired plants to split the water and create hydrogen. Now, so that becomes gray hydrogen, right? Then you have blue hydrogen, where you do it the same way, but then do carbon capture so that your net carbon is 0. And then you have green hydrogen, when you create the hydrogen using renewables. And then for cars like the Mirai, you have the electrolyzers, which can use electricity to split water. We have many electrolyzer companies. I think there are 2 or 3 big ones here. They're very good investments from the stock market point of view. Some of them are already valued very high. And then when we produce hydrogen, then we can convert it into ammonia, because ammonia is the most efficient hydrogen carrier, right? And I'll read out, instead of going through this slide, I'll read out some useful stuff about ammonia, because in Western Australia and so on, they are creating green ammonia because they want to ship green ammonia from Australia to Japan. And then they're shipping green ammonia from Chile to Rotterdam. And then they'll split the ammonia, separate the nitrogen, and then you have hydrogen with you. So it's a great carrier. And ammonia planes, actually, the US Air Force, and even after the Second World War, Air Forces used to use it when oil was scarce. So it's not the first time that ammonia has been used to fuel jets and so on. And Airbus is doing several experiments, and they have three planes ready, which use hydrogen to fly the plane. The issue is getting the mileage out of it, because most of air pollution is created by flights over 1,500 miles. And for that, they still need to figure out how to use hydrogen. Hydrogen for small flights can be, that technology has been cracked. Okay, we go to the next slide. Wave energy, I'll quickly go through it. It's basically, instead of wind energy, the whole thing is below the sea. Use tidal power. It looks much nicer because you can't see all those windmills. It doesn't interfere with the boats and ships coming in. Thames are going to use tidal power to clean up the Thames. I wish they do. It's exactly the same with the Ganga, the Ganges River. Okay, I'm going to rush through some of these. Next slide. This is important. Energy storage, right? If you can't store, so there's a nice saying which people say, can't store, no power after 4, right? Now, lithium-ion batteries are ill-suited to store large amounts of solar, right? And we need a portfolio. That's where using concentrated solar instead of just solar PV becomes very important, because concentrated solar focuses sunlight on a certain point, it melts the salts and keeps it melted in, and that melted salt takes in molten salt takes in a lot of heat. And then when the sun has gone down, that can be used. And there are other ways of doing also, by heating steam, etc., to store energy for 6 to 8 hours. It is in fact a very good additive to solar PV. We need a portfolio of solar solutions. The one good one I came across is sodium sulfur batteries. Again, I like it because they use earth abundant materials and sodium sulfur. If I see one of my earth abundant materials, what we do is, again, we use sodium, sulfur, aluminum, and stuff which are not rare, like lithium, cobalt, etc., etc., etc. Now, here I would like to say something about the regenerative economy again. You see, while Elon Musk is very well known to us because of Tesla, the soul behind Tesla was a guy called J.B. Straubel, right? He was a Tesla pioneer too. And he was the one who made the gig factory for the power. He did the battery optimization for Tesla all through. And I think recently, about a few years back, he quit Tesla, uses money to create a company called Redwood Materials, because he had understood that cobalt, for example, a key element in the battery, is dug in the Democratic Republic of Congo, refined in Finland, sent for China for making cathodes and anodes, and travels totally 20,000 miles before it comes to the automaker. Going back to the picture I put up, so while even if you're powering your Tesla by solar, the stuff going into Tesla battery has created a lot of pollution reaching there. And that nobody is counting, because it's pollution at the point of use we are looking at, not pollution along the supply chain, right? So he created Redwood Materials, yeah, the company, which has got a lot of funding. And they have come up with the concept of something called urban mining. So because a lot of these PVs and other stuff which you're going to input now, they all have a lifespan and they're all going to go. We cannot afford to waste them. Now, multiple technologies are coming up for reuse. And the whole concept of, oh God, we've gone out. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, we can hear you. Please continue.
I can't see any of you because my screen has gone dead.
We can see
I'll
you
speak
and we
on.
can hear you also.
Oh, great. So if you can see and hear me, that's fine. And I was dreading just this. Okay. So the whole concept of urban mining has become very, very important. And urban mining is using existing waste batteries, right? So this is what Redwood Materials does. Amount of battery material in a high-end EV is 10,000 times the screen, 10,000 times of a smartphone. But cobalt use is only 30 times. So if you collect 300 smartphones, you have enough cobalt for one EV battery. And the 1 billion, now this word billion is very happily used, but I'll go by what he said, is used batteries are in US homes in terms in used laptops, smartphones, and so on. So the whole concept of urban mining again becomes a big deal when we come to the circular economy and the regenerative economy, right? Because copper, if I remember right, I was 40% of copper in use today is recycled copper, because getting a copper mine to function takes about 5 years. And all this EV is going to lead to lots and lots of use of copper. Can you guys hear me? I'm unable to see any of you.
Yes, yes, we can hear you.
Okay. So one of the biggest stores of energy right now is pumped hydro, right? So for example, Norway produces green ammonia and all of that because they use energy when the sun is shining, wind is on, to pump up hydro, store the hydro, and in winter, if you can get the water to flow down, then pumped hydro is one of the big simple techs used for seasonal storage of energy. The other one is sodium sulfur batteries. I don't have time to explain. I would really ask you to look at it. Bayer is selling it. The technology came from NGK in Japan, and that battery is really good as a stationary store of supply. For example, if you were living on a deserted island, you would have a few windmills, a few sodium sulfur battery stuff, storage, and then you charge it by the windmills and then use it back in the night to run the homes of a desert island. Okay. Now I come to solar beyond energy. Are we seeing that screen?
Yes, the screen is visible.
Yeah, freeing us from critical shortages, right?
Energy storage can't store no power.
No, sir. This is
That
still
is the-
energy storage.
I'm talking about solar beyond energy.
No, sir.
Yeah.
So
Now it's
Yeah,
come.
this is now storage.
Beyond energy, right? So I just wanted to bring an Indian example here because I'm very aware that we are pretty much in the last stages, last few minutes. July 31st, 2012 was the biggest. I was not in India at that time. Tell me if I'm wrong. But what my reading says, the biggest blackout in human history hit India. 700 million Indians lost access to power. And they lost access to power because delayed monsoon drove millions of farmers to suck up groundwater from deep down. And that just crashed the grid, right? Remember charging a Tesla on a supercharger is loading 200 ACs on the grid. Now, when we talk about an EV policy for India, are we very sure that a grid can take it? And second one is need for water desalination as our cities run dry. And a lot of new technologies happen. A lot new technology, which makes desalination very worthwhile. I mean, many of these rich Gulf countries have no water shortage problem because they're massive desalination plants, as does Israel. So it's a question of driving down costs and capital, but there is no shortage of water for the good citizens of Madras to complain about water shortage, living right next to the Indian Ocean. So a solution is to concentrate. I mean, we are talking about, again, CSP. So I come to carbon capture and storage. And now I'll have a slightly difficult time answering questions without being able to see you. So I'll expect somebody to read it out. And when I come to carbon capture and storage, the one thing I want to touch is direct air capture. And I was very fascinated by the technology using that, because the company called Climeworks in Zurich, which basically what it does, it uses huge fans in a box, which sucks out the carbon in the air. And the filter is used to take out the CO2. And that when the filter is full up, it is then taken out. And it's then heated to 100 degrees. CO2 is released, pure CO2 is released, which is then used for liquefied carbon fuels and multiple things. So many things are happening, because as we said, we have to look at the built world. We just cannot be looking at new stuff, because what happens to the old stuff of which we have for decades and centuries. And captured CO2 makes fuel, plastics, bubbles. For example, Climeworks sells to Coke, and Exxon and Chevron use it to release trapped oil, captured CO2. And it can be sold to generate carbon credits. So the world needs 50,000 carbon capture plants, for example, by 2050. And like everything in green energy, every opportunity is worth a few trillions of dollars. And that's about it. Was I within time?
Yeah,
Hello?
very much. Thank you.
Okay. Because I had a lot more slides, but cards, but I think I needed to touch the 45 minutes, which I think I have.
Yeah. Are you able to see us now?
I am not. What I will do is I'll log on through my phone. Something is going wrong with my brand new Windows Surface. I don't know why.
So first of all, thank you for that very thought-provoking presentation that you have made. And I'm sure all of us in this particular call are really thinking about what we are doing to our planet. And as you mentioned that fortunately we have only one.
Right. Unlike unless Elon figures out to take us to the next one.
Yes, true. So there are some questions in the chat box that I will read out, or I will request Bela Vyas, it should there.
Just 1 minute. Yeah, I got you guys on the phone.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So Bela,
belts and braces here. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
You will you be able to unmute yourself and ask the question?
Yes, ma'am. My question is that, sir, according to you, is it possible for the world to achieve carbon neutrality by 2050, which is the plan set by most governments today? But
So
is
the
it
issue with carbon
achievable?
neutrality is whether we achieve it or not, we have to do our very best, because and it cannot be the Taliban solution of going back to the Stone Age, or even Greta Thunberg, if she says, I'll just have 2 pairs of clothes. We need to have a decent living, but we need to get there. So multiple things have to happen to get there is my point. And my second point is everyone has to make a contribution, the individual, the firm and the government, right? And I believe when you want to make systemic changes like this, top-down policy is as important as bottom-up. If we need to reach there, we all have to understand the concept of one planet living. It's just not the responsibility of Americans, because they polluted the earth for decades. So why are they asking us not to pollute? We need to develop. No, those arguments are gone. What they did in the past, why they did in the past is a different thing. China polluted a lot, we can also pollute it. No, none of us can afford to pollute. And each of us, like the pandemic, right? And when the COVID spread, it spread worldwide, right? And then if you have a vaccine, you're not safe until everybody is safe. You can't just vaccinate your little town like New Zealand and say, nobody else come in and don't come. That doesn't work anymore. So just like we have to vaccinate everybody, we have to work together. And if we work together, there is hope for hitting the targets by 2050. And that will, it's an optimistic target. It's what, 1.5. The only measurable metric is increase in temperature, right?
Yes, sir.
So thank you, Bela. I will request Professor Manoj Kumar Pandey to unmute himself and ask the question.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir, for this very engaging presentation. Lot to learn from this all. My simple question is that, sir, right now everyone is talking about the solar panels and solar energy, but already some talks are being there in the air that what will happen to the wastage, handling the solar plant when they are not usable, how to handle that waste. So we have not even covered the issues of e-wastage. And to be honest, somewhere I read that India is becoming a garbage ground for the Western country to put their e-wastage in India. So it's very fancy to talk about so many things, but what about the handling of the issues?
Okay. Here, that's why I brought up the example of Mr. Straubel.
Yeah, Redwood.
J.B. Straubel, who, going from creating Tesla, went on to create redwood materials and created this whole concept of urban mining, right? When waste, I don't think in the future anybody will be willing to send you their smartphones and their laptops when urban mining becomes very important, because, as I said, you need about 300 smartphones, to old dead smartphones, to get enough cobalt for a battery. And there are 1 billion used batteries. Now, these will no longer be waste. These will be your urban mines. Again, it's a question of abundance and accessibility. Waste is abundant in India, I can see it, right? Now, what we do with the waste is up to us, because right from the sewage water, from where you can take out ammonia, and then you can use the hydrogen from the ammonia to run the energy to clean up the sewage, clean up the rivers. That is what is, again, a circular economy, right? And if somebody was going to send me thousands of used smartphones and e-waste, as you call it, I would happily take it, provided I sort of, at this time, I would go for a collaboration with Mr. J.B. Straubel and say, let's create a factory in India. And if I have the Mahindra and Mahindra with an EV strategy, I'd say, fine. This is one way of reducing your dependence on China and other places for cobalt, nickel, and so on, because at least you'll get 20-30% from waste. Maybe less, maybe more, I don't know. But that whole regenerative economy is needed to kick up to address waste. And it's just not EV, it's, as I said, wastewater, sucking carbon dioxide from the air, which is basically pollution, in air is waste, right?
Yeah, thank you. I will request Venkatesh Kattigiri to unmute himself and ask question.
Thank you, madam, for the opportunity, and thank you, sir, for the wonderful new insights to the existing problems. So just wanted to know, what would be your advice for the entrepreneurs, because we have startups in every space, but probably no new energy company probably has come in the last 5 years. And since it's a finance heavy investment, how could the bootstrapped startups, could there be a scope for them to enter this space of energy, new energy, or research in this field?
Research is a different thing. Within new energy, there are multiple things. There's science, and there's technology, and then there's applied technology, right? There's a lot of stuff happening in Cambridge University in times perovskites and so on and so forth, which can then lead to, the previous gentleman was talking about wasted solar panels. Now they're creating new materials with differing band gaps, as they say in silicon technology, which can be used to coat the old ones and renew it totally, right? So a lot of technologies in the labs. Now to take it from the lab to production and then full-fledged commercialization, you need government incentives. the government has to have a policy, government has to put money behind it. That's why when Joe Biden came up with his infrastructure plan, the first one, that was just building roads and bridges. The second one, the soft infrastructure plan, which talks about putting money of close to $3 trillion. Because unless you apportion money for this, individuals and companies by themselves will not do it. But one good part I have is a lot of new capital is going in. So if you have a really good idea, again, I say the good part is because these are global global problems with global solutions. We can, one of the points for optimism is you could take your idea, and there's close to $1 trillion which has gone into clean energy funds, right? If your idea is really good, then the idea is applicable across the world, right? You will get the funding from even capital markets, venture capitalists, and so on and so forth. But in general, the government must support it with money. It has to be a co-investor or a primary investor, and it has to change the laws. Does that make sense?
Yeah, true. So without the government incentives, I think nothing moves.
Nothing moves, and then capital markets are there. If Zomato can get so much money for selling food on scooters, why won't you get money for coming up with something which removes pollution from India, for example?
True.
Thank you, Venkatesh, for your question. I will request Ashok ji to unmute himself and make a comment, and he can pose his question too. Ashok ji, over to you.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening, sir. We can hear you.
I'd like to request you to please elaborate on what is green purchasing. We heard a lot in the US and other advanced countries, but in India, it's not so much being practiced. So would you like to elaborate what is green purchasing and how corporates must practice it? Thank you.
I have a lot of echo. Can somebody explain to me what was asked?
He needs to mute one of his devices. He's logged in from 2 devices.
Okay, I have muted the other one.
No, his. Ashok ji.
Hello?
Hello. Actually, Ashok ji wants to ask what is green purchasing and how corporates practice it. And Ashok ji is our former president who wants to know about green purchasing and how the corporates can adopt.
Look, I really don't understand the concept because there's a negative concept called greenwashing, right? Greenwashing is people do multiple other things and then they try to show they're green. And many oil companies do that. They said, we bought a little bit of green stuff here and there. It has to be green across the supply chain. And that was the whole point of the first picture. When you say, okay, I'm so clean, but it is leading to a really messy situation at the back end. Like a Tesla, it's using cobalt and nickel. Tesla says it's done green purchasing. Apple says it's doing green purchasing. Is it really? How do we measure it? When you get cobalt and nickel from Democratic Republic of Congo, from open pits, are we measuring the pollution there? Or are we just saying we're measuring the last mile of the cobalt supply chain? I don't understand how this is done. It has to be done in a very joined up manner, and entire CO2 and GHG across the value chain has to be monitored. Maybe blockchain will be used in future because blockchain is the best way of getting provenance. I'm not talking about Bitcoin. Just talking about the blockchain, because they're now using blockchain in diamonds, right? So when you buy a diamond, you know where it is coming from, whether it's a blood diamond or not. I don't see why I can't know about it's a blood cobalt or not. So green purchasing, I don't know. I mean, I think it's just a gimmick, in my opinion. I might be wrong.
I'll request Professor Arun Sehgal to comment on the discussion that is going on, and he can add his inputs also.
Thank you, Kavita. This is an amazing opportunity for me to learn so much today from my colleague and my buddy.
And you don't say the other word.
No, the other one I have is strictly between us. So no, I respect Rahul a lot, and it's very good question which Ashokji asked, because I've had problems because I am in chemicals and pharmaceuticals, Rahul, as you know.
Yes.
And a lot of our industries, they produce a lot of acidic water, which used to be thrown even in India. China is no different. So, but India started taking steps ahead of China in neutralizing that water, recovering that water, and then separating the solid waste, etc., which invariably had a cost attached to it, maybe about, let's say not much, but 50 cents or 70 cents per kg.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm talking about the year 2010. And I won't name the big multinational company, and we had a presentation on this green purchasing, etc. And we did talk about the situation that, look, it does cost us to prevent pollution, to neutralize the material. So we want that extra price against China, because China was throwing all the pollution to the environment. And when it comes to negotiation, even today, no one really audits the manufacturing facilities. They just go there to put the ticks.
That's correct.
And after coming back, when you really need to give that extra price consideration in purchasing activity, they don't. Because at the end of the day, what they tell me is that we also have to survive competition.
But Arun, this is where the government kicks in, right? Because it is the ultimate responsibility of the government of India to ensure India is not polluted, right? If the government is pushing for exports of chemicals, pharma, generic pharma, and so on and so forth, it has to give you credits. It has to give you subsidies to ensure that the process of export does not lead to increased pollution.
But you see, the problem is that subsidies are no more allowed. WTO comes heavily down on subsidies and definitely not on. So I think somewhere
that has to be figured out how to give, because WTO, I understand, but WTO has to be told that these are not subsidies. That's a matter of negotiation with the WTO, whether it's a subsidy or it's preventing pollution. I mean, WTO can't say go pollute and select the cheapest thing.
Which is what they did actually in the earlier era. That's where pollution got exported to China and India.
Yes.
So I think there is a need, definitely, like we have these ISO organizations, certifying organization. Maybe I personally feel there could be a need for an international auditing organization that really certifies that, yes, this manufacturing process, right from the supply chain processes and the supply chain sources, eventually converting into the finished products or service, is really a green process.
Arun, just one more thing to it. The green process doesn't end by purchase by the consumer. Green process should be circular.
Yeah.
It should end. For example, I got a fridge. I buy a new fridge, for example. The green process ends when the fridge end of life, and then it goes and it is then separated into parts, and how many parts, because that would be the whole green thing. And you're absolutely right. The audit has to be along the entire life cycle and the supply chain.
Absolutely. I don't know. I can see maybe Mr. David has something to add. I could read your face maybe on this discussion.
Who's this? I can't see.
Mr. David Gill.
I really do bow to Rahul's knowledge of clean tech, which is much greater than mine, and particularly the instruments that are being developed, whether it's regulation, whether it's government support. Why I was smiling is I feel in many ways this is an argument that we keep going around in any form of innovative business. And I look back, for instance, at the impact economy arguments of 10 years ago, or in the UK, the arguments about creating venture capital in the first place 25 years ago, and it always seems to go through the same trajectory. So I think we will get there, but we're going to go through a lot of naysaying before we actually hit success.
This is where a totalitarian regime like the Chinese works very well nowadays.
But they're still polluting, huh? China is still polluting. They are moving their industries to different geographical areas so that they can pollute there.
That they're doing, that I know. I know the example of Zambia, for example. Well, it's one planet. That's why one of the slides was called One Planet Living.
Well, that was a beautiful one. So I guess it's definitely, we hope for the best.
Yeah, thank you, sir. I'll request our former President, Shri Indrapalji, to come in.
We must have all read recently that Reliance is setting up a huge green factory or initiative near Jamnagar at the investment of 55,000 crores of rupees. And none other than Dr. Mashelkar is leading that initiative with about 9 different experts in different technologies. And apparently the vision of Reliance is perhaps one of the best that they have come across in the world. So that is, India is moving, and the large businesses are now getting attuned to meeting net zero targets of 2050. So that was the one point. The second is government itself, like a larger companies like BHEL, BEML, and other public sector units, NTPC and others, are also changing their mode of business towards greener energies. NTPC is setting up huge solar plants and so on and so forth. And the third point is the construction thing you had mentioned, Mr. Kalla, in your slide. We at Godrej also have 300 tons per day plant to recycle construction waste, CND waste as they call it, construction and demolition, setting an example. And we are supplying, we are making prefabricated culverts which are given to various municipal works in Mumbai. So there is a work has started in becoming green, but as you rightly said, it has to be much more. And the question
and it has to be joined up.
In my home and my farm, what can I do to become greener? And unless we all start asking that question, it's very difficult for even government to bring about the major change. Because after all, India is a country of 1.3 billion people, and they make all the difference in the world. So I would say that your presentation was extremely eye-opening, and it sort of gave us, and I'm sure you'll be talking to government also in these lines, because they have to give the push, incentivize in many ways to convert India into a green nation or green society. So thank you so much, Rahulji, for taking so much trouble.
I hope you enjoyed it. I genuinely hope you enjoyed it. I'm not a great one for lectures, but I thought this was worth making the effort, even at the cost of embarrassing myself, but I hope it went well.
No, it was really very interesting, and the points that you have made, I think, are really very eye-opening, and it is making us all think about how are we going to contribute for not polluting and giving the right things to our next generations. I'll request my colleague on the executive committee, Dr. Vigyan Verma, to unmute himself and ask question.
Yes, ma'am. Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay. Good evening. Good evening, Mr. Rahul. Thank you so much for the talk. I have one belief that something which cannot be measured doesn't really exist. Now, I was trying to work. In fact, I do a lot of work on economic value added, EVA. And when we talk about economic value added, you take care of all the stakeholders. And that's where the ESG becomes extremely crucial. But I'm facing huge amount of difficulties as to how should I really measure the impact of ESG on the stakeholders' wealth as such from the corporate point of view. Is there any kind of established way, or is something emerging with regard to quantification of the ESG impact on the stakeholders' wealth? That's my
So
question.
there are 2 things which I can answer. I do not know immediately, but David Gill and I would be happy to, and I, assisting him, will happy to find out if such initiatives are happening in UK, because UK has been a thought leader on this.
Right.
What I did come across in one of the finance channels was a company called Arabesque, ARABESQUE, who are doing a lot of work on this, because they say the same thing as you, that what is cannot be measured, cannot be sorted. And that's why they're putting the whole thing in one figure, which is global warming, again, coming down to 1.5 degrees centigrade by certain years.
Absolutely.
So I would look up at Arabesque, again, ARABESQUE, if there's something there. And I promise I'll look up if there's some stuff going on in Cambridge or in the UK, and I'll get back to you.
That'll be very nice. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Thank you. I would like to mention here 2 things. All of us, as you mentioned, that we have a problem of plenty at our place. As you said a few years back, if we talk to our previous generation, our mothers, our grandmothers, the amount of stuff that they will have, I think it has been very minimal, and what that was required for livelihood. But somewhere we have lost the track, and abundance is what is the hallmark of being, what I can say, very rich, or in Hindi we can say samruddhi is not about lot of things. It's about how you can make use of the resources that you have optimally. Mahatma Gandhi ji had said that it is not for everyone's greed, and I think we are going in that track also.
Absolutely.
Few years back,
we went, as I said, I had 2 pairs of shoes. My kids are over 20, and that's because we went from using carefully to make waste model, right? And then we're coming back to that Gandhian thing. I mean, if you look at the young lady, Greta Thunberg, apparently she has just 4 hoodies and 2 pairs of canvas shoes and so on, and she's, just a teenager. It's an entire thought process has to change. But then again, this ability to make and sell so many things have brought out so many people from dire poverty, right? Bangladesh is now ahead on several social indicators, even compared to India, right? And a lot of it was garment manufacturing. If I see the stuff I'm wearing, majority of it is made in Vietnam, Bangladesh, or whatever. But then it has led to pollution. It has led to the whole problem of Bangladesh getting flooded over. So which is the chicken, which is the egg? Should the Bangladeshis be poor? Should the Indians be poor? So this whole, the question is, now we've come to the next level of a regenerative economy. Doesn't say Afghanistan will be the least polluting country in the world, and they will become soon, but that's not the point. The point is we need to have enough, as Gandhiji said, and we need to have enough sustainable, and whatever we have needs to be recycled, including cheap fashion.
Yeah, thank you. I think the concept of development, which is defined by economists, need to be relooked at. And what development that we are aiming at this point in time needs to be included with a lot of caution and lot of philosophy into it. Few years back, in University of Mumbai, the then Prime Minister, the then Vice Chancellor Dr. Rajan Velukar has introduced a concept. The concept was called as Mumbai University's new initiative for joint action now. And we know that he had said that if every one of us contribute, I think the students of University of Mumbai, that at that point in time, there were some 8,50,000. I think we will be able to make a great impact. A small step by many will make an impact. I think something of that sort is required to make this sustainable. We owe to our next generations many things which we have forgotten, and we need to remind ourselves of that.
My point is only this, as a final point, is there is no silver bullet, right? There have to be multiple initiatives across multiple disciplines, and it has to be done fairly quickly. So we cannot be looking at, I mean, we are not a small nations like the Scandinavian nations who are doing a brilliant, brilliant job. But then again, I look at Sweden, it's 8 million or 9 million. Finland is 5 million. And all of them have a joint population less than Bombay, right? We need direction and financial incentives from the government to make it happen, because we do not have the time to make slow social changes. That's my point. Whatever you're saying is right, but it has to happen at speed.
True.
Do you agree with me on that?
Yeah, sure, true. I will request Chaya madam. Are you there?
Yes, I'm there. I'm there. I really enjoyed the talk, and I enjoyed the tongue-in-cheek humor a lot also, while there was a disclaimer right in the beginning that, this is such a serious topic that there cannot be any jokes, but I thought there was a lot of tongue-in-cheek humor, which I did enjoy. And there were a couple of very serious take-home messages for me, which I thought I will share today. And a little bit about the EV also, Bigyanji, my 2 cents I would like to share, since you provoked that thought in me. I did some research in that area, so I would love to share that also. I hope I have a couple of minutes to speak, although the time seems to be up, Kavita. May I continue?
Yeah, please. It's all yours.
So I think what appealed to me the most from this lecture was the change of mindset that we need. Of course, we need the direction. Of course, we need the policies. Of course, we need the government support and funding and everything. But what we need is actually a change of mindset. I think what Rahul pointed out somewhere that struck me very hard, and that is that we really have to stop looking at garbage as garbage. It's not a liability, whether it is an e-garbage or whether it is a physical garbage. As long as there is material inside the garbage, there is a resource out there. And as long as our mindset is to think and visualize the circular economy, when we embark on manufacturing something, or when we embark on that futuristic innovation and all those things which are supposed to be the luxury, because there are so many examples Rahul gave about Tesla, where it sounds, very glamorous to think of an EV to be on the road and ourselves to be sitting in an EV, but how our infrastructure is just not geared to take it on is something I found very challenging. And that challenge happens because we feel scared to think of garbage and touching it even from a barge pole. The truth is that garbage has matter, and every matter has resource. And therefore, if we channelize our entire thought leadership and our capabilities in visualizing how the circular economy can help us deal with the garbage and recreate something which is of use, then really there is a lot of abundance. I mean, he ended up saying somewhere there is an abundance of garbage, and I burst out laughing to myself. But later on, I thought it was a very serious, it was a very serious sentence. Yes, the man has created huge garbage around, but then that garbage is not really useless. If we first choose to minimize it with a mindset of using everything with in a constructive manner and in the minimalistic manner, as Kavita points out, which is just enough for our need, then we end up creating minimum garbage. And then that garbage, if we can circulate through a circular economy into recreating something, the way he pointed out how hydrogen based so many innovations are possible and that they can make us feel abundant, then I think there is so much optimism in this presentation and there is so much to look forward to.
One idea for you, Chaya, along with Arun.
No, okay, we'll talk about that later. Let me complete this for the public.
Okay, fine.
Yeah, let me just complete this. So there is so much fodder for thought in this presentation, and therefore there are so many opportunities. Now, with Bigyanji's observations about economic value added, Bigyanji, I would like to make a mention of genuine progress indicator and gross national happiness. All right, so triple bottom line, as we say, that, you know, when we talk about EVA, which is of course is a financial measurement of how much value is being created for every shareholder, including right from the shareholders till for every stakeholder, right from the shareholder till the government, our employees, customers, suppliers, bankers, everybody. If we talk in terms of triple bottom line, then we are not looking at value for money, we are looking at value for many. And if we are looking at genuine progress indicator, something on which the initial research was done by the University of Minnesota, they had invented 26 indicators to calculate the social and the environmental profit for the organizations, where things like, you know, parenting time, then volunteering time, then also, you know, taking care of the elders, and then the cost of accidents, then cost of maintaining a prison. Why that? The biggest useless expenditure is the defense budget, which is the largest for every country today. And it has only negative connotation in terms of value creation. We have this example of Afghanistan right away in front of us. And yes, of course, Bangladesh is far ahead of us because of Professor Muhammad Yunus, who discovered their microfinance for the social good. And of course, Bhutan is very much ahead of us because they discovered something called gross national happiness. So not just us, I think the entire world has a lot to learn. And unless GDP is supported with GPI and GNH and some such indicators, but we are going to face a lot of problems in the future, but we are going to have a lot of worries. But then looking at today's presentation, I feel that we need not have those worries. So I would really like to conclude saying that. Thank you, Rahul, for that eye-opener of a presentation. I think the BMA as a thought leader must promote this change in thought leadership, because this is where all the change will be initiated. Just to quote Mahatma Gandhi again, Kavita, he said, be the change that you want to be, right? So let us be the change that we want to be. And I'm sure there is a lot for us to still gain from this magnificent planet. And there is a lot more to give back to it, because as we say, that this is the only planet we have and this is the only home we have. Thank you very much. You are muted, Kavita.
So thank you, Chaya madam. Rahul, do you have any last comment to make? Is it there?
I think it's just taking break for a coffee, maybe.
No.
But I just have a last comment based on what Chaya, just to supplement, because not every time that we will find that we have something to recover from waste. There will be a cost of treatment to waste. And if it is, let us welcome that. Let us include it into our product costing and pricing. And let the governments ban what is produced in a non-green way in any country to enter their shores.
I agree. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I was very much there. It was muted. The phone was muted because I was listening on the laptop.
Okay.
Anyway, I completely agree with all of you. And I think even at the small businessman level, there are multiple opportunities coming up. And the one thing I wanted actually specifically to tell Arun is, and Chaya, there's a company which I recently came across thanks to this presentation called BEAM, BEAM, which uses, because we have this entire network problem, which uses solar generated charging stations, and its valuation is going through the roof. And its ticker symbol is BEEM. Something like that would work wonders in Mumbai. So I'm not saying that everything has to be at the Reliance scale. There are plenty of small opportunities, because everything in India really spreads and the SMEs take it. Reliance can do so much, and it's good they're doing it. And the Tata Electric is going to have 100,000 charging stations, and they're doing at that level. But if you drill down, there's a lot of opportunity for the SME. And therein lies the genuine wealth creation, because our maximum employment is created by SMEs, right? Because this whole thing,
I want to tell you that you were talking about the government's incentives, because I was just having a meeting this morning, and we were talking about having these charging stations for the electric vehicles in our society. And I'm told, and this is a fact, that there's 5% rebate on property taxes given by Bombay Municipal Corporation if you install electric charging stations in the society, housing society. So the intent seems to be there very much. I was really very happy this morning when I came to know of this.
No, but the point there is the BMC is forgetting that they're going to draw it from the grid, right? They should then give a 15% incentive. If Arun Saigal goes and has a collaboration with Beam and sets up solar powered charging stations with sodium sulfur batteries, which doesn't affect the grid. Because if you are, all of you guys, because it's a wealthy society, I know that, start charging EVs together, then you won't have electricity in the kitchen.
Yeah. So we have nice, great discussion, and the topic is not going to end here, because we know that it's vast. As you have already said in the beginning, that 1.5 hours will be really a short duration. Let us keep it for the second episode, Rahul, if you agree, sometime later. And I thank you for giving us this very, very engaging presentation. And so many questions and discussion came after your presentation. I'm sure there are many other questions also. Thank you for that great presentation.
My pleasure.
And
thank you so much.
Thanks are due to Mr. David Gill, who has joined us today on this call. I will give my thanks to our former presidents, Shri Indrapal ji, Tendulkar sir, Shri Ashok Sharma ji, Chaya madam, my colleagues on EC, Rajesh ji, who at the last moment came in for the initial opening as I was traveling, Bigyan ji, Arun sir, for this his very interesting points in the discussion, Dr. Arun Kshirsagar, Professor B.V.R. Murthy, Professor Manoj Pandey from academia, all others who were present today for this very, very different but very essential topic. I'm sure those who could not join, they will watch this on our Bombay Management Association's YouTube channel. And there are other than these, there are other 175 videos, very interesting videos of the webinars that we had conducted. Do watch the videos. Subscribe Bombay Management Association's YouTube channel. Next week, on the 1st of September, we will have in BMA Masterclass, Dr. T.V. Rao, and he is going to talk on leadership development strategies. On Friday, the 3rd September, we have Shri R. Gopal Krishnan from TCS, who will be talking on Friday fundamentals. Do join us. Till then, be at home, take good care of yourself, and don't forget to join on 5 o'clock in the evening on Wednesdays and Fridays for the webinars that we bring to you on different topics and different speakers. Thank you for joining. Thanks.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Arun. Thanks, Chaya. Thank you all.
Thanks,
Kavita.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.